All right, all right. It is Friday night. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another evening of Heavy Metallurgy. My name is Alan, and I'm here as always with my esteemed co-host Marty. Marty, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, doing good. How's everybody doing tonight? Good to see everyone. Good to see you, Alan, as always. Just a
Mhm.
couple days ago, we were talking about some scorpions.
Yep. Wednesday night, Marty and I, along with Jim and TJ, talked about the new Scorpions album, Rock Believer. And you can check that stream out this weekend if you're looking for something to watch. Had a really good conversation, a lot of different viewpoints on that album. This was one
Yeah,
that not everybody really agreed on and not everybody warmed up to at the same speed. So, yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. I thought it was really went quite well. So,
a lot of
something
fun.
check out when you've got some time for some extra viewing. Before we bring in our guest and get into tonight's topic, just some of the usual reminders. First off, let's make sure that we mention this. If folks have missed it, the new Mitch Albom album, Kanawha Black, is out. Marty has been frantically packaging and shipping copies for about a week
Yes.
now. So
Yep.
they are in the mail. If you haven't got yours yet, just hold in there, sit tight. The man's working at it.
Big
Uh,
load went today, and a big one's going tomorrow too. We're all about the big loads here.
he is churning them out as fast as he can. I've
Yeah.
listened to it several times this week. It's a really, really good album. Fans of the band will be very happy with it. It sounds really, really fantastic. Great lyrics, great vocals, music's put together really, really well. It's well produced. Yeah, it makes a great impression right off the bat. So if you did not pre-order it, hop on over to the Bindrune web shop and order yourself a copy and give Marty even more things to package and have to take to the mail because he's getting he's running out. We got to keep him busy. He needs some other things to package for sure.
Yep. And it'll be worth it too. It's been worth the wait. Turned out great, absolutely great.
Yeah.
And also, we've got t-shirts available, and people want to support the channel. Super chats are also available. Link in the description for the t-shirts. Super chats are in your chat. I don't know anything about it. I've never done it, so but it's there. If anybody wants to support us, hey, we appreciate it, and we love all of you folks for hanging out with us tonight. It's good to see a lot of friendly, familiar faces.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Folks are filling in. And yes, the super chat, it's just there. Sometimes folks ask, hey, I'd like to help out. What can I do to support? It's a way you can, chip in a little bit. It helps us do things like pay the, monthly StreamYard fee. I helped, get a new microphone so that I sound a lot better than I did on
Dreamier. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, and the t-shirt looks great. I was holding it up a second ago, wearing a different one tonight. But yep, excellent image by Nate Burns.
Yes, sir.
Kind of very reminiscent of early boat thrower artwork. So cool t-shirts available. Super chats if you want to chip in. If you don't, it's quite okay. We're here and doing the same gig, whether folks chip in or not. And let's see. Marty, anything else that you wanted to mention that you've got coming up or coming out?
No, nothing yet. No, nothing to really announce yet, other than we're just trying to get caught up, which is good. We're getting there. Next week we'll be caught up.
Good deal. All right, then. Without further ado, I think it is time to bring in tonight's guest. Marty, would you do the honors, please?
Yes, Tom from Cine Arcadia Productions. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, guys. I'm honored. I obviously watch the show whenever I can because I comment. So that's proof of my existence.
Yep.
And yeah, I am sweaty, but have my 45 Grave T-shirt.
Nice.
I don't have a Solitude Aeturnus T-shirt, so this is we have to settle for 45 Grave.
That's quite okay. That's a cool shirt, absolutely. And yes, Tom has been a commenter on Friday night streams for a very long time. Has a great sense of humor, so always look forward to seeing his comments there. And was really happy when I heard that Marty had talked to you and that you want to hop on and join us for an episode. If folks are not familiar, can you tell them a little bit about your channel? Because you have kind of a different content than a lot of the folks that we associate with the metal part of YouTube. So what kind of stuff have you got over there, Tom?
Well, I started doing on-camera stuff maybe 6 months ago, and I kind of just do movie or music topics, just whatever I want to talk about. So it's not specifically metal, but I have some, like the next video I know I'm going to do is about soundtracks I have, and then I'll be doing like a metal collection purchases video, and then stuff about horror movies, just kind of whatever I want to talk about. I have a ton of rare movies, movies in general, Blu-rays, CDs, vinyl, more CDs than anything. So I have tons of shit that I could talk about.
And if anybody is not familiar with this channel, there is a link in the description. Please go over and give him a sub. Like I said, he just started getting in front of the camera, and it's good. He shows some good stuff, and there's a lot of other film type. If you're a film junkie, there's probably some other things on his channel that are going to interest you as well, for sure.
Yeah, lots of cool and different stuff, and not just heavy metal. Other areas to explore too, for sure. Let's see. And so, Tom, what topic did you pick for us to talk about this evening?
It was, well, I initially, the one big thing that came to mind was Fate's Warning, but then Marty told me, but you guys are already planning a Fate's Warning thing, which is awesome.
Yep.
Because that was like a big band for me in high school, and still in my head, that's kind of an underrated band. But then I picked the big thing that immediately came to mind was Solitude Aeturnus, and kind of, since Marty and I talked, was really surprised just how Exterminator City. I don't think so. What is that? That sounds Italian, but maybe it's not. Because Solitude Aeturnus is basically kind of the first Doom band that I got into after Black Sabbath, and really going through and like checking on the internet, checking reviews. I'm really surprised just how people don't know about this band or aren't fans. Like they're Candlemass fans, Saint Vitus fans. Maybe they know the name, but they're not Solitude Aeturnus fans. And I was really surprised, because this is like, or at least the couple of albums I had in high school were stuff I just listened to constantly. So I didn't realize kind of how they're relatively obscure, it seems.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We've even, already tonight in the chat, several folks have been asking, what kind of band is this? Is this a black metal project? Is this shoegaze music? Folks are definitely, a little unfamiliar. So for those not familiar, I kind of imagine if you start with this and cross it with this. So take these two albums and let them have some kind of beautiful doomy baby, and you know where we're going to be at tonight. That's
would you say Fate's Warning? I would say the Candlemass for sure, but I hear a lot more Trouble.
There's a big Trouble vibe.
There's more Trouble than Fate's Warning.
It depends on the song, especially. I think
depends, on the era.
Yeah,
no, there's a good dose of Fate's Warning on some of the, especially some of the earlier Solitude.
And there's somewhere in this, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but John Perez says in this, he does the liner notes on this thing, which is the compilation of demos and stuff, and he says, he specifically talks about Awaken the Guardian. I don't know if I'll be able to, it's just this huge write-up, but he says that that was a masterpiece that everyone should listen to, and that he was inspired by.
Yep.
And they were partially named after, because they were originally called Solitude. So they were named after the Candlemass song and the Black Sabbath song.
Yep. Your two biggest Doom bands both had a song called Solitude, so that all lined up pretty nicely for them until they realized another band had the rights to the name.
Yeah, and they got a cease and desist. So
yep.
But yeah, I definitely hear, but it's really in certain sections specifically, especially the first album and also the second album. Certain sections of songs are, to me, very Night and Brocken or Spectre Within, Waking the Guardian, one of those albums. So
yeah, I agree 100%. But yeah, another thing, going back to your point about this band being a little unknown, they have kind of been off the radar. Their last studio album was in, I'm double checking, 2006 or somewhere. Let's see, Alone was 2006. So it's been a good 15 plus years since the band. They didn't immediately break up or retire. They were listed as on hold for ages, and finally they just admitted that we're not doing anything else. But so yeah, it's been a good 15 years since the band released anything. Maybe a compilation here or a reissue there, but that's long enough that the band has maybe sort of slipped past a lot of especially younger metalheads. That there hasn't been a new release or a lot of chatter to get them interested in it.
Yeah, and another big problem is just the availability of the first two albums. Yeah, this is a great comment. If you watch some of the any footage, but like some of the older camcorder footage of them live, Robert Lowe is just awesome on stage. But the first two the availability of the first two albums, they're super hard to find on vinyl. Like even I looked it up, and even the CDs are pretty pricey. I don't know what the deal was, because even John Perez, I don't know if he's still currently has it, but he had his own record label, or he reissued the first album, but then it was hard to find again. So,
Brain Ticket, name of the record label's Brain Ticket.
Brain Ticket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brain Ticket Records. Yeah. And he's done a few different releases on it here and there. They tend to be really high quality, and they also tend to be spaced out quite a bit. One thing I've noticed with John, that he doesn't put out stuff very frequently, but when he does, he seems to be very meticulous, that he wants it to come out, and be a very nice, package. And this was true both when he was recording with Solitude Aeturnus and with everything he's released on Brain Ticket. That he always strove for, the quality over quantity was a big thing with him, it seemed.
And there's and this is another great comment, Wilson. They said specifically in an interview that Roadrunner gave them tour support gave them exactly $0. They couldn't even get $100 or gas money or anything to go on tour. The whole time they were signed to Roadrunner, it was $0.
Yep. Yeah, maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves now. So we're going to, with this band, folks, we're going to kind of work through them chronologically rather than just ranking. They don't have a very deep catalog. There's only 6 studio albums. And so this week while Marty and Tom and I were sort of planning how we wanted to do this tonight, we decided that it'll make a little more sense just to go through their history chronologically rather than just try to rank 6 albums and, well, there you go, we're done. So yeah, Tom, you showed a couple minutes ago that really nice compilation that came out. It's called In Times of Solitude, and it kind of collects a lot of the early material from when the band was still known as Solitude. So yeah, maybe we start where this band came from as part of the Texas heavy metal scene. I don't know
if you want to do this now, but you mentioned that the band kind of 2006 is their last album that came out was called Alone. And then shortly after that, Robert Lowe joined Candlemass for this album, King of the Grey Islands. And honestly, it was right around this time is when I started picking up. I only own 3 Solitude Aeturnus albums. So, but this made me say, oh, this guy's a great singer. And it started getting me down this road here. But this is probably a big reason why Solitude Aeturnus is it went inactive and then kind of became no more. I don't know all the ins and outs about it, but
yeah,
I would think Candlemass had your singer departs for a bigger band is usually the death knell for your own band, your original band.
It definitely would, put Solitude Aeturnus on the back burner so that it was going to be, slower for them to do stuff. And you see that happen. Yeah, you're right, Marty. It happens with other bands, when with Tommy Copernic, singing with Camelot now, it definitely has put Seventh Wonder on the back burner. Although they do have a new album coming out later this summer, but we'll save that for a power metal night sometime in the future. But yeah, Robert going on to Candlemass, and again, we'll talk about some of those other projects and other bands that the guys have been involved with as we work through things. But Tom, where did this band come from?
Arlington, Texas. So they were part of that Texas scene. There's actually on there's a DVD I have that has like an early version of the band from I think '87. They're actually opening for Gamicide as a point of reference. So a big thing they talk about is how they really stood out in the Texas scene, because it was a lot of thrash bands at that time.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things that John later put out on Brain Ticket. This nice compilation is called Texas Metal Archive, and it features a lot of those bands that never quite got a deal. Sorry if there's some glare there, but the idea here was John wanted to go back and chronicle a lot of those bands that he came up with, and he started in one of these bands called Rotting Corpse. That was a much more straightforward thrash band. And like you said, he kind of mentioned that, by around 86, 87, he realized that, there were a lot of, good bands on the Texas scene. And this is a really nice compilation for folks that want to check it out. John's got excellent liner notes on every band, pictures for every band, comments on every band. So really cool. But he noticed that the scene was very crowded with a lot of bands doing kind of the same thing. So, like you said, Tom, he wanted to do something a little different. I've heard him, in different interviews say like a little more unique, maybe a little classier sound. And as you mentioned, one of his big influences was Candlemass, but another one was Awaken the Guardian.
Yeah. And, well, he's on a couple of interviews, he specifically said that he thought the band that he was in was kind of more of a fad and wasn't going to last. He wanted something, like you said, classier, that would kind of last within the annals of heavy metal. I mean, he mentioned that a few times, something along less pretentious than that, but something along those lines.
Yep.
I'm going to make something great.
Yeah.
John, if for folks aren't familiar with him, John Perez is one of these he's a die-hard lifer for heavy metal.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that lives it, eats it, breathes it, sleeps
He's
it.
a very good songwriter too. A very good songwriter.
And,
good guitarist.
And like psych rock too.
Yep. So what did he do? He left Rotting Corpse and started working on this new project.
So they had originally had a different singer, and Chris Gapehart,
I think that's out. Yep.
So they actually had their initial demo was called "And Justice for All," released in 1988. But
another cease and desist coming your way.
but it came out, I think 6 months or so before Metallica's album.
Right.
And a funny thing, I remember when I was initially exposed to the band, it was in Pit Magazine. It was when I initially heard of them, and there was an interview, with Perez about Through the Darkest Hour, and the first question was, "Hey, are you guys a big fan of the Megadeth song? Is that why you named it?" And Perez was noticeably pissed, like, about that question, and I didn't understand why. And then later, the demo thing, I realized that makes sense. That he's like, "Oh no, not this again. People think we're ripping off the Megadeth song."
Yep. When he was trying to move away from thrash, so it definitely was not intentional, I don't think.
And then also some of the couple songs that didn't make it past that demo, and then some of the other like rough tracks that are still around. There's more of a traditional 80s metal sound to some of the tracks that they kind of left behind and didn't actually record on their first 2 records. and you can even hear more of the like the Night on Brocken influence on those tracks, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
like there's
I think you're right. And John
songs
has
like,
said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah. So they had a song "And Justice for All,"
Mm-hmm.
but it predated the Metallica song, of course, and then "Into Battle" and "Sojourner"
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other songs, but they're more traditional metal.
Yeah. Yeah. They still kind of fit within the Solitude Aeturnus framework, but yeah, they are faster songs. They're a little more
Yeah.
up tempo. And that's something John mentioned that, with him and some of the other guys in the bands coming from that kind of thrash heavy scene, they weren't afraid to speed up a little bit and play some faster parts to some of those songs. And they're actually fairly good songs. I went back and replayed those demos this week for the first time in a long time and was struck by it right out of the gate with that first demo. The songs are really good. They're really well put together. Obviously they got reshaped a little bit here and there as the lineup changed over the next couple of years. But that first demo is very, very solid, and it really does establish their sound right away. Even though it's got a different vocalist, he didn't have the same kind of range, and emotion that Rob Lowe has with his voice. But he still did a really good job delivering that kind of material. So I think they right away with the first demo instantly set themselves apart as something that was pretty distinct from what else was going on in Texas at the time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that stood out to me, just compared to the song, the studio recordings, is just like the guitar tone on that demo is kind of awesome, because it's like more of an underground metal for the time rather than the more polished. So it's like a kind of gnarly raw guitar tone on the demo, which is pretty cool.
I gotta say though, going back and listening to all this stuff this week, granted, as I was telling Tom in the dugout here, that I wasn't in the mood for Doom this week. So that may have initially, as the week went on, I warmed up to what I was listening to, but all these albums, I'm very blown away. It's probably because John came from that thrash. I mean, it's traditional Doom as the albums go on. You hear a little bit more of a down-tuned fuzz in the guitars, like maybe a little of a stoner influence, a little Sabbath influence here and there. But this it's straight up Doom, but it's got a lot of really interesting things going on musically. And it really, you can kind of tell John, he wasn't really that worried about sticking to just the Doom thing. Granted, there's not a lot of speed or anything, but there's some really interesting guitar riffs going on. It sounds, there's a lot of times my ears perk up. I'm like, man, that's a killer, atypical Doom riff. I mean, a lot of the stuff, especially, the second album, all throughout the catalog, really, there's just a lot of things on there that they were doing that, really fantastic musically. I like this band mainly for the music. We'll get into the vocal stuff here at some point, but I was really impressed how diverse the riffs were. Each album, there's a thread, there's a theme. You can tell it's a Solitude Aeturnus album, but there's something special in that music. And if you really train, sit and listen to it, they don't sound like everybody else, which is really cool. If I take anything away from this week, it's that I have a newfound appreciation. I mean, like I said, I'm late to this band. It was probably 2006, 7-ish is when I started buying records, when they started popping up. And coming back to them this week, it's been cool. It's been a lot of fun. And it's got to be I'm rambling, sorry, rolling back around. It's got to be that thrash influence. I mean, he's not just influenced by just Sabbath or just this or just that. There's a lot of metal in here, and the solos are fantastic, and the song structures are fantastic. And that is a theme that seems to carry throughout all 6 of these records for sure.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that stands out is that they're able to take kind of a Doom structure, but go off like on a breakdown where it's traditional heavy metal or pretty fast, and then work it back around. So it's still a Doom song. But it has it diverts and goes to this other sound, or even like a kind of a psychedelic sound, depending on the track. So.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That's all. Those are all good descriptions of their sound. Something else that's worth pointing out, here during these early days, Perez has said this repeatedly, and it's true. Doom metal was barely a thing, during this time frame. Yeah, again, 87, 88. It's thrash, it's glam. You didn't have a lot of bands that had ever really tried to be very doomy. There were some, of course. Sabbath was the huge one, and Candlemass, after that. But after that, St. Vitus was around. Pentagram was around, but nobody was paying any attention to Pentagram. Obsessed was around, but again, very, very underground stuff. Doom as a genre was not really that widely recognized. And Perez noted that was, sort of, it was a double-edged sword because it allowed them to be more unique sounding. He was kind of surprised. He's like, you've got, these awesome, bands, Candlemass and Sabbath. Why is nobody else playing music like this? Well, I guess I'll do it. But because nobody else was playing music like that, it was kind of hard for them to fit in. Again, if you're going to, a small gig in, East Texas back in the day, and, your lineup is, stuff like, Rotting Corpse, Gamacide, and Solitude Aeturnus, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is going to stand out, and maybe not in a way that was, going to be well received by the audience all the time necessarily. Today, Doom is just, it's one of those big slices of the heavy metal pie that we're all familiar with. In the late 80s, it was a very, very, very niche kind of deal.
Well, you think about it too, Trouble. I kind of compare these guys a little bit to Trouble earlier on, but I mean, the first couple Trouble records, I think people lumped them in with later as Doom, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the first couple Trouble albums that it isn't really stereotypical Doom there either.
That's right.
It's very strange. And that's probably how, I found the connection with the Solitude and Solitude Aeturnus and Trouble.
Yep.
More so than the other bands, I would guess. But yeah, very atypical for sure.
Yeah. With all of this, now we shouldn't, not to, bury the lead. Candlemass is a huge influence here. Well, we shouldn't play up all the other things and downplay the Candlemass. That was a huge, huge part of what Perez was going for. He loved the Sabbath sound. Candlemass, paraphrased in his words, they had kind of taken that and added this bigger epic metal sweep to it, and that's what had really caught his attention, which makes sense in terms of the timing. Candlemass was getting widely known around 86. And it's, here in 87 where, John is immediately then, starting to put together a new band with that kind of sound, following up on, he was really blown away with the early Candlemass material. So, he does, they do this demo and Justice for All. And again, they're under the name Solitude at the time. The demo makes the normal tape trading rounds and, excuse me, gets reviewed in some zines. Over the next couple of years, everybody but Perez eventually exits the band. The lineup from And Justice, by the time you get to the first album, John is the only guy left standing. But it's kind of incremental. One guy comes in, another guy, enters, a couple came in pairs here and there, but you end up with a very different lineup within a couple of years. And they do some more pretty short demos. They had a Mirror of Sorrow, which I think originally had only one track, and later they added a second track to it. It takes a little while to kind of refine their sound, but I think one of the big changes is the change in vocalist. Gabe Hart exited, and a vocalist named Rob Lowe comes in. So, Tom, what do you think of this change in vocalist?
I'm a big Robert Lowe fan, and I like his sound in this band better than the Candlemass stuff, because I just love his kind of Ronnie James Dio thing, but going into more of Alice in Chains, or the way he just switches back and forth between like a more atmospheric singing, a more melodic singing, into the kind of the full belt is just really awesome, because he doesn't he doesn't do that so much on the some of the other projects that he works on. He does that more in Solitude Aeturnus, and that's like my because he can do kind of the Ronnie James Dio imitation, and he has on Dio on various covers. But I just love kind of the flow and the switching between the kind of melodic, atmospheric singing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his voice, stands out very, very well. Definitely gave them sort of a new dimension. A lot of the songs had been written with the previous vocalist in the band, but yeah, and they already had this sort of very unique lyrical take. But yeah, Rob really takes those to another level. Obviously, a very talented singer. He had been in at least one band before, but I don't think I'm trying to remember. I don't remember any recordings that Rob did before he joined Candlemass. So I don't think there's any pre-Candlemass Rob Lowe material out there for folks to check out, unless correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember any of that.
I haven't heard about that. But I did remember John Perez said that which I thought was funny, he was in a psychology class with Count, which is what's his face? He calls himself. He's apparently a Count, so he
is it
esteems himself.
Covington or
Count Lyle?
Lyle, yeah, Stedman.
Yeah, they were in a psychology class together, and then Lyle was friends with Robert Lowe, so that's initially how that happened. How they hooked up.
Yeah, Lyle kind of helped bring Rob into the fold. And so, yeah, you got other members changed out too. They picked up Edgar Rivera on second guitar. He was another Texas, metal scene stalwart. He had been in the band Battalion. They did at least one really good demo, but I don't think they ever moved past that stage. So yeah, they eventually get the lineup put together, and they originally were picked up by a small label called King Classic Records, which I think was in the Midwestern U.S. But they were going through financial issues, of course, right about the time Solitude Aeturnus, they were picked up by them. But it did eventually work out that what was to become the first album got into the hands of Martin over at Roadrunner in the UK. And so a deal was worked out to get them onto the Road Racer imprint. And it's kind of funny. I've never seen this before, but poking around at stuff this week, the first non-demo release for Solitude Aeturnus was a split, which really just looks like a short compilation. There's like 4 tracks on it. That was put out by Roadrunner Road Racer in, 91? And just to show you how much trouble they had, sort of advertising Solitude Aeturnus. This thing was called Breaking Barriers Volume 5. Again, it's just probably one of these little giveaway promo discs to help promote some new stuff coming out. The bands featured are Solitude Aeturnus, Suffocation, Pestilence, and Immolation. Those are the 4 bands. So you have Solitude Aeturnus paired up with 3, real, top tier death metal acts. It's like, that's, once again, one of these things is not like the other.
Well, if we're going to talk about Robert Lowe for 1 second, I might as well get this out of my head and out of the way right now. Do you mind? You're heading in a direction, and we talked about Robert Lowe, and I want to touch on this real quick.
Well, I just wanted to add it actually they sat on this album for the first album for a year and a half, which was which Perez hated, obviously.
Oh my God, it's crazy. That's a long wait. A year and a half, you can have another album done and ready to roll.
Yeah.
But with Robert Lowe, I really like the guy's vocals. I think he's a very unique singer. He's got a sound and a style of singing that's very much his own kind of thing, which I really appreciate. But he is like one of the singers that I like a lot, but I don't necessarily like what he does with his vocals a lot of the time. And that is very, very much evident on releases like this. Death Magic Doom and Lucifer Rising. Some of these songs, he follows the riffs verbatim. I love his pitch. I love his power. I love his sound, but following the riffs is super boring. And I was really surprised spinning these back to back in one day. His vocals on this are great. He sounds amazing. But if you listen to these two albums back to back, and I had never really done that. I always like pull this out, or I pull this out, after 6 months and listen to them on their own. It's amazing. But you play them back to back, he sings the exact same way on both of these albums. His lower to high, it sounds like he's singing the same song 20 times. How many songs are on there? It's a bit distracting. I was a bit distracted by it. And I realized that here's a guy that's got tons of talent, tons of power, but he doesn't always know the right path to take and how to use them, I thought. There's this album here. I heard that he came on this band and he ended up singing the vocal harmonies that were placed forth by the guy that sang on this demo. I don't remember who the singer was that sang on the demo for this. So he came on, Robert Lowe, and sang this guy's harmonies. Basically, I think there's a song on here called Embracing the Sticks. The best Robert Lowe performance I've ever heard. It's an amazing, he's doing some very interesting, explosive, powerful vocal structure over these riffs. And it's just soaring and amazing. But once this album is done and you get into this, he's left to his own devices. He's following the riffs. I don't know if he's just not connecting with this material. I don't know if it's just the material is so bare minimum basic. This Solitude Aeturnus stuff, he sounds great on every album, but there's a lot of vocal choices. There's a lot of structural choices where he places his words. It could have been so much better. And that's not saying he's not a great talent. I think he struggles a bit, but as the albums went on, he did improve. I don't know if he started to get it figured out. I don't know what it is. And I don't know if I'm the only one that has ever noticed this, because there's been tons of people saying how he's amazing. And he is amazing. He's a great talent, but I don't like how he uses it. It could have been so much better. But anyway, I just want to get that out of the way. And having said that, feed me to the dogs here. But
okay, so Marty's a hater. We get it.
I'm not a hater. I think he's a great talent. I just don't think he's really good at finding a good space, for what he's doing. I don't know.
Let's see. Well, backing up into this first album, you're right, Tom. It kind of got shelved for a while, which was, I'm sure the band wasn't happy. So it doesn't really come out until 91 for the first album.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
is the actual
91.
Yeah.
Yep. And so finally, at long last, you had Through the Darkest Hour come out on Roadrunner. And Tom, why don't you walk us through this one?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it already. I hear more of the Fates Warning influence on certain sections, and then definitely I think this album it's more wearing the influences on their sleeve type of album that you expect from a debut, and I love the album, so it's not a slight, but you kind of hear more of the Candlemass, more of the Fates Warning. Like there's a certain, like the breakdown in White Ship, or there's some riffs in Transcending Sentinels that to me are very Fates Warning. Early, or obviously the John Arch Fates Warning, but yeah, I think it's a really good, or really a great debut, because to me there's not really a song that I consider bad.
There isn't really.
What Marty was talking about does bother me at certain points, and that's maybe my biggest critique of the band in general. It's just when Robert is following the riff too closely. But I will just add on that I think there are certain times where he's kind of in the zone of the riff, but kind of modulating around it in certain songs. And I like that. So for example, like White Ship, I think is my least favorite. I think it's still a solid song, just because of what Marty talked about, where I think the vocal melody and the riff are too close to one another. It's just a matter for me. It's just like, I think he plays around with the melody, with the riffs in terms of, but when he gets too close on certain songs is when it kind of bores me. So.
Yep, no, it's a fair assessment. All joking aside, yeah, Marty has a point that Rob can do a lot of amazing things with his voice.
He's
sometimes, but sometimes things do feel like they're just a little out of place, or that they don't quite come together as well as they might. It rarely bothers me, but yes, I do notice it at times too. But yeah, I would agree with Tom. It's Into the Depths of Sorrow, excellent debut album. It very much shows where they're coming from. Yeah, and again, this coming out in '91, not a popular time for doom unless your name was Cathedral, I guess. All the attention is on black metal in the underground, death metal in the less underground. Watching the kind of transition of bands like Metallica and Megadeth, watching grunge come in. Doom metal way down the pecking order at the time, and here's an album that's just really pure unadulterated doom. Blinded. Some folks are a big fan of that Tyrant album. I have not heard.
I need to hear it. I guess I did not even know he was in the band. I had Too Late to Pray and another one.
Yeah, he just did the one album.
Ones. Yeah,
he wasn't with them back in the day for the.
Yeah, I was just listening to a little bit this morning, but he sounds quite different than the Solitude Aeturnus stuff. But the one thing I just wanted to add, and another thing I really love about this band, it's just some of the song dynamics. Like for example, Mirror of Sorrow, which is one of my favorite songs on the first record. It has the kind of atmospheric, clean singing with the clean guitar at the beginning, and the way they segue into the heavy part. It's just so awesome. And there's lots of sections where they have these really amazing segues from kind of more atmospheric parts to faster parts or heavier parts, or vice versa. And Mirror of Sorrow to me is just a great example of that. And probably my favorite track is Transcending Sentinels.
Agreed.
But then the opener is great too. But but the two tracks that to me are just amazing are Transcending Sentinels and Mirror of Sorrow.
Yeah, I agree. There's really not a bad song on here. One thing they do very well that shouldn't be overlooked is they add that epic flair into the traditional doom metal that bands like Saint Vitus, Trouble, The Obsessed, Pentagram, a lot of the other doom at the time, great bands, but they the thing that always distinguished Candlemass from those bands is Candlemass made it feel like this huge epic legendary thing going on, whereas a lot of those other bands made it sound a lot more of the low end depressing downer kind of thing. Solitude Aeturnus was one of the few bands that really nailed that Candlemass vibe of giving it this huge sweeping epic flair to the music. Especially on these early albums like this one, the lyrics lean. There's not a Christian theme. They were never a Christian band, but there are definitely sort of these apocalyptic good and evil themes going on in the lyrics a bit. But again, so it just adds this kind of extra grandeur to the record. It very much conveys these kind of in Solitude's a good name for it. But it's not it's not shoegaze music. It's not life sucks and then you die music either. It's got this bigger transcendental kind of vibe to it.
It's not stereotypical doom. It's got
really.
I mean, a lot of different facets of metal going on in there. Like Tom was saying, the transitions are very powerful, and there's a lot of interesting twists in the song. But it takes. Oh, go ahead. I'll talk about it when I get there. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Fine. No, I was just going to point to. I mean, I thought the cover art for this one always worked well for what they were doing too. I mean, it's got, again, sorry, I'm getting a lot of glare tonight, but it's got medieval ruiny looking thing going on, tree in the background like the Trouble album and all that. But the guy sitting here is just, you know, a dude in jeans and a leather jacket. So, you know, right away they're kind of, you know, mashing together, you know, this kind of, you know, older medieval fantasy imagery that you associate with a lot of traditional metal and even doom metal. But they're combining it with, you know, a more modern aesthetic. You know, this isn't, you know, some, you know, medieval waif sitting there, you know, pondering where she's going to, you know, get her next sheep or whatever. This could be any headbanger from 1991. And one of the first times I encountered the band or read about it, that, you know, was something that came up. It was an old issue of Sue Knowles' fanzine, Manic Reaction. Sue, of course, wrote for Metal Maniacs and other publications too, Sentinel Steel. But this one, the cover date is April 92. Now, who knows when it actually came out? Cover dates on those things could sometimes be off by quite a bit. But she interviewed John Perez in here. It's the first time I got to, you know, exposed to the band. And, you know, she makes, you know, a comment, you know, that the cover art just feels really perfect for this album because, you know, anyone who looks at it can instantly identify with this character. We know exactly what this guy is feeling. We know exactly what kind of mood he's in. And we've all had that kind of mood from time to time. And, you know, just the fact that they didn't add, you know, he's not a knight on horseback with a sword. He's not, you know, a guy in a monk's robe wandering around in a landscape from, you know, 1200 AD. So like, nope, this is a modern dude, just hanging out, needs some alone time. So yeah, the Sue interview really got me interested in the band, but it took a while to track down a copy of the album. Yeah, as Tom mentioned, those first couple albums, can be hard to get now, and they were very hard to get in the early and mid 90s. This took a while for me to find. For at least a year, maybe more. It was probably like, you know, every time I go to the record store, I was always digging around hoping to find a copy of this album. It took some doing.
Yeah, because I didn't have this because I never saw this in a record store in the 90s. This is the Brain Ticket reissue, so I think it's mid 2000s.
Okay.
So I never heard it until then, because I never saw it anywhere.
Yeah, well, I finally got this. It was just a local record store. The little you can see it's got, you know, the local college radio station WFAL had you know, dumped a bunch of CDs they weren't playing at the local store, and so yeah, went in with my girlfriend one day. We were flipping through the used bin, and this was in there, and my jaw hit the floor. I literally like yelled at the guy behind the counter. I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you have this!" I think I actually kind of scared him a little bit. He's just like, dude, it's just a fucking album. Come on. I don't even know who this band is, but I was just like, yeah, totally geeking out right in the middle of the store, having found it in the $5 CD bin.
My version is at a Metal Mind reissue. It's got
Okay.
Road Racer and Road Runner on it. This is the cheapest digipack ever. It's got a ripped thing here.
Man.
So this slides out. It's got broken teeth. And this is a good thing here too. Look at the other side. This is like the tray is coming off of the cheapest garbage digipack ever. But yeah, I found it for a pretty good price online. I guess being late to the band is beneficial. I don't know.
And I just wanted to add something that Ryan had said, because actually their original singer, he wrote the lyrics and then to a couple of the songs on the first record, and he was actually you know, had a Christian influence. Like basically they were biblical lyrics. So initially they did have biblical lyrics, and then he had mentioned Robert wearing the cross. So I'm not exactly sure where they got the. Maybe people thought where they were a Christian band, but maybe just because of the initial lyrics that they had, might have been.
Yeah, they always had that kind of. There was always that question about them, and John, you know, he was always very clear. Like, look, we're not a Christian band, but you know, he never like flat out said like, you know, we're not Christian either. He was always just kind of like, no, it's not a Christian band. That's not what it's meant to be. But yeah, it was definitely always, you know, sort of a vibe about them. And you're right, Tom, especially on some of those early song lyrics. But so yeah, they start off with an absolute, you know, banger of an album. Tom, how would you grade or rate this one before we move on to number 2?
To me, it's kind of I didn't think of like numbers out of great A plus or anything.
Okay, you don't have to if you don't want to.
But I just think of it in terms of tiers of two, basically.
Mhm.
So I have my two absolute favorites, and this is in the next two.
Okay. All right.
So
So, yeah.
I guess this would be like 3 or 4. But again, like there's not the only thing I can really complain about on this album, honestly, is in White Ship, just the sections where he's modeling the riff. Robert
Yeah.
is that's like my only honest complaint. So again, like I can't find too much to complain about in the discography.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I do think it's a great debut, and I do like the second album better, actually. But
Okay. Interesting. But yeah, this one for me, yeah, it's a top tier kind of 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 album for me. Really like it. It's an amazing debut, great cornerstone for this style of doom metal. So yeah, I rank it really highly. Marty, what do you think of this one?
I think it's an amazing debut. It's musically very ambitious. Listening to this isn't your typical, what doom ended up being. Like we were talking about earlier, that early era in the early 90s, late 80s, you got bands like Trouble and these guys and other bands that are, Candlemass was always kind of doom to me, but Trouble was in a nebulous zone that people wanted to classify them as doom, but it couldn't really. The first couple albums are just too much metal stuff going on. This is kind of in the same boat. And honestly, if this was a one and I want to make it clear, following the riffs verbatim, it's a thing. It's a characteristic. It's a tool. It's going to happen. And I don't always hate it, but Robert tends to do it a bit. He did it more so in Candlemass. The thing that bugs me is here, if this is the only album they put out, I'd be like, chef's kiss. This is wow, great. But when you put this on and you put the next one on, his vocal performance is nearly identical. He's doing the same low to high thing in the same spots. He phrases the same way. Granted, it's the same songwriters, so he's singing over very similar riffs. So he's doing a lot of the same. He's got a lot of the same tendencies and how he's placing his low to highs. It's very It ends up when you compare the two albums back to back, play them at the same time. It's very predictable. And that made me kind of be like, holy shit, maybe this isn't as good as I thought it was. But I mean, out of the catalog of 6, they have 6 albums. I'm going to rank this number 3 for me. Okay. I think if I just listened to this album this week, I'd been, it's really well done. The songwriting is amazing and Robert's vocals are amazing. And I hate to be that guy that's nitpicking what seems like something so stupid, but, it's a thing. It's a thing. And it's prevalent through, a good share of their catalog, and it carried over with him into Candlemass. And everybody's saying Tyrant. I'll check out the Tyrant. I'm curious. I'm curious to hear what he's done on that to see what's a little bit different. But like I said, he's like one of those singers. He's probably one of the better singers in this genre that I don't love what he does with his talent. I mean, he has moments of greatness, but he's got a lot of moments of, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's my number 3, and I think it's a very solid debut. I think we're gonna jump into Tom here with the second album. I think musically it got even better and more well defined on the second album. What do you think about that, Tom?
Yeah, I love the cover. So I definitely think this is a better cover. It's a little the first one's a little sad bastard on the nose. But again, this is, to me, this is similar, but just better.
I agree.
I mean, it's basically 7 songs because there's the outro. I mean, the only tiny thing I could even complain about is just that, like, I guess maybe the first half is so amazing, like that the second half is not quite as good, because I think my favorite my favorite track would probably be It Came Upon One Night, then Black Castle, then Plague of Procreation probably. But this is just, just wall to wall. Not a bad track on there. And to me, I guess It Came Upon One Night to me is kind of the standout. Like that main riff is just so amazing. Yeah. I mean, I don't, like to me, this is like, if you're into if you're into Candlemass and you haven't heard this, I don't even know what to say. At least, I mean, maybe don't pay $50 for a CD, but you can go on Spotify or whatever to hear it. It's out there in some form to see if you like it, if you're into doom metal. But it has more of that. There's kind of a big difference between the third album that we're going to talk about, but the first two are kind of similar in that it's doom metal, but there's that kind of traditional metal in there within the doom structure.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, this one, it very much does feel kind of like, the debut part 2. They've tightened some things up. It came out in 92, so they got it out faster this time. In the Manic Reaction interview I showed a minute ago with Sue Knowles, John had mentioned that, they had built up a lot of songs, kind of waiting while getting all the record deal stuff dealt with. So they were ready to get another album recorded. Got it out there pretty quickly. This one for me, it does feel a lot like the first one. And Marty, I can see if you played these two back to back, it might start to feel like one longer
same song
album.
over and over vocally.
Yeah. This one for me, I have it a step below the debut, and part of that may simply be the order that I got these albums in. Again, these first two albums were a pain to track down back then. I probably didn't get this one until, at the earliest I got it was late 96, and it was probably more like sometime in 1997 that I finally got it in a CD trade online.
Yeah, mine is a hole punch. I think I got it in the late 90s.
Yep, mine's a hole punch.
I never found it. Okay. I never found it in an actual store. But again,
I never did either. Nope.
But again, it was like I started listening to them in 94, I think. So it might have, or 95. So it might have been hard to find already by that point.
Yeah, I never saw it in a store. Going through like the old GeoCities type sites and crap, I would find people every now and then with, trade lists posted. And I got this from someone. So by the time I got this, I had already heard several of their other albums. I had heard, I was already, really well versed, knew the first album quite well. And so this one is always to me felt like, it's good, but it's not like the first album. And I just have always preferred the first album. But it's got, you mentioned the better songs on it already, Tom. So if you like the first one, you'll probably like the second one too. And it definitely does kind of close a chapter for the band. We'll get to it in a minute here, but you're right, Tom, that album number 3 is going to go in a different direction. But Marty, I know you've already kind of talked about this one, but did you have anything else you wanted to add here on?
No, not really. Just that it's more of what went on in the first album. And I think the songs are a little bit more, even more so ambitious. It's like the songwriting was amped up and even more of a realization of where they wanted to go. The album after it starts to shift a little bit, but this still has a lot of trad metal on it, a lot of really interesting song structures. The songs are not boring. The songs are really well written and heavy, and doomy when they need to be, heavy when they need to be. Good structural dynamics. And again, if I had this album and I didn't have the other album and I just listened to this for this week, this is the only one I listened to, blown away. Robert Lowe kills it. But and mine is another Metal Mind reissue. It's got a couple demo tracks tagged on the end of it, but at least it's not that shitty digipack. It's a jewel case. But I mean, if I'm going to rank this one, this is my number 2 in the list for sure.
Yeah, it's my number 2. I'll officially call Into the Depths of Sorrow my number 3. And again, like it is similar. I guess like the big compliment to me, it's kind of more consistently intense. And then again, like I said before, Into the Depths of Sorrow, I hear more of the influences. Like there's a few times where I'm like, that's a Fates Warning riff, that's a Candlemass thing, and I'm not really hearing that as much on Beyond the Crimson Horizon. Again, it's kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah, they're starting to move a little bit away from their influences. Yep.
Yeah,
makes sense. All right, so this was also the end of their run with Road Racer. So when they came back in 1994 with album number 3, they were on Pavement Music and put out the album Through the Darkest Hour. So, back to Tom. Will you launch us on album number 3 and how this one might be a little different?
There's a funny story actually that I heard John talk about, because he was pissed at Roadrunner because, like I said before, they gave him zero money for touring, and he was friends with Lee Dorian from Cathedral, obviously, and they were talking on the phone, and Lee's like, "Man, I'm so sorry that you got dropped from Roadrunner." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And so Lee knew about Roadrunner had dropped them, and so is that comedic conversation of that awkward conversation where he knew, but the band didn't.
Wow.
But he said that he was, he was glad that they got dropped ultimately. So
yeah, when you're the lowest priority on a label, it's a tough slog. You have contractual obligations and you can't get away from that, but you can't also make a label care about you. Unless you sell bazillions of albums, you can get whatever you want. But anyway, your thoughts Through the Darkest Hour.
Through the Darkest Hour. Okay. So this was my introduction to the band, and I was talking about this bit in the pregame. I'll call it the pregame. Green room pregame.
Dugout, green room,
dugout. But basically, I think it was probably like freshman year of high school. It was in Pit magazine. I think Slayer was on the cover, and there was an interview with John about this release, and then I read some reviews about it, and I don't think I'd ever, other than I had Black Sabbath, I don't think I'd ever heard any other doom metal in my life. And I found this at a store, picked it up, and just listened to it a ton in high school. So this was kind of my introduction to doom metal, I would say. But it's a very different, it's a different sound in that they kind of, a lot of the traditional metal stuff is kind of to the wayside on this. And this is more of very much a 90s American doom metal.
Agreed.
Band. And I'm hearing more Alice in Chains kind of influence on this. But I would probably still honestly pick this as my number one, even though I don't think it's as consistent as the first 2 albums. So I know that doesn't make sense, but this is the one I've listened to the most, and the one I just like to re-listen to. And again, it's splitting hairs between the first 3. But basically, a giant difference is the drumming, because it's the same drummer, but his drumming in the first 2, there's a lot more traditional metal, a lot more double bass. It's like he has a totally different style. It's more of a regular doom band that Black Sabbath, Trouble kind of drumming style. It's still really good because he has a lot of really interesting fills, and like kind of simpler riffs, but kind of more variety, more vocal variety to me. And my big thing with this album is the 5 tracks that are spread out. And another reason why I would pick this over the first 2 is, and this is something I'm just kind of big on with albums, is just the kind of the flow of the entire album. So I think you have a really great opener, and then you end with the ballad, and then what Falling is the opener, and then Shattered My Spirit is the ballad at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And the songs Eighth Day, Ninth Day, and then Pawns of Anger. Like the 5 amazing tracks are kind of spread out in a good way for me, in my personal taste. And Haunting the Obscure is also a really good song.
Yep.
So even though it's not wall to wall as strong as the first 2 to me, I really love the flow. And there's just also the riffs are kind of catchier, which may turn some people off if you're more into traditional metal, but I really love that style. And John is just great at writing like really catchy doom metal riffs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the opening riff to Ninth Day, Ninth Day Awakening, or the Ninth Day Awakening is a prime example. It's kind of a simple riff, but it's super catchy.
Yep.
Of the Black Sabbath variety.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got whatever that gene is that Leif Idling has for writing doom riffs. John Perez has that same component in his DNA that they can just crank those riffs out so effortlessly over and over through the years. But yeah, so yeah, other folks are mentioning this was their introduction to. This was the first album I found. I had heard about the band before this. This was the first one I was able to pick up. Was trying to remember when I got it. It was either the fall of 94 or fall of 95. A little bit of a blur there. But got it on a record buying run in Akron, Ohio at a place called Quonset Hut. For years, it was kind of the go-to indie metal underground, different styles of music. In that whole Akron area. Akron's a little bit south of Cleveland, so we'd go over there. We'd try to go once every few months if we could and check stuff out. And I was really, really wanting something by this band. This album had just come out and snapped it up. And you've described it really well, Tom. Some things that stand out right away. First, it's got a new logo. It doesn't have that older, more gothic logo. It's got just the large print letters that they would use from here on. I think even just the band's picture on the back of it kind of tells you right away, that they're going to sound different. You compare that to, the band picture from Beyond the Crimson Horizon. They've got, the poofy shirts and, the hair's done a little more.
Rob dyed his hair.
Rob's got his hair dyed jet black. He was just got the big baggy shirt, the dark cross and stuff. And for me, this is where, like you said, they kind of drop a lot of those ethereal elements, the more Candlemass like elements to the music, and they embrace their inner Sabbath a lot more. This to me feels a lot more like Paranoid or Masters of Reality era Sabbath was more in tune. But you're right that it does also have it's not a throwback album. It doesn't sound retro. It does have a 90s sound to it. Lyrically it's different too. That again, they're kind of dropping some of those pseudo Christian religious vibes and going for something a little darker, a little angrier. Even just the opening song is extremely heavy, great big riff. The chorus is just a few words over and over. It's like move, we fall, move, you fall, and we die. Just repeated over and over, really hammering it. Pawns of Anger, you mentioned, Haunting the Obscure. Darker songs, a little creepier. It doesn't have that sort of big epic apocalyptic sense. This is a little more down and dirty and personal in its anger and its isolation. But that said, it works really good. I think this, and I don't remember which song, but I think this is also the first time you hear the band start to incorporate a few Eastern melodies into the writing.
And it's
something.
Well.
It's something
they carried that along a couple of the later albums too. A couple
songs.
They
absolutely do. Yep. They here and there, and they always did them pretty well.
Yes, sitar on the Ninth Day, and interestingly, on one of the early, maybe it was 92, one of the camcorder concert things, they actually would come out to a Dead Can Dance song, it was
Love Dead Can Dance.
Yep. And
was
that's
on-
one of
it-
the
it-
non-metal bands that John has always mentioned as an influence.
yeah, it was a track
Really
on
well.
Within the Realm of the Dying Sun. I can't remember. Enigma of the Absolute, maybe. But they would come out to a Dead Can Dance song, and then he mentioned them as a influence. And I think this album, and maybe this is obviously with the sitar, and there's also they've used like some kind of monk chanting type of stuff. But I think in even some of the melodies, there's kind of like a Middle Eastern kind of thing, and that shows up more in this album. However they got it, but and I really like that aspect of the sound because it kind of differentiates it from just like a Trouble knockoff. Some of these kind of more quote unquote Middle Eastern. If you hear it, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Kind of the tonality of it.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, at the end of Joe, I agree with you. The album's a little less consistent than before, but it's still really, really good. In my ears, it's their heaviest album. It's the one that has the most heft to it as you play it through, and for that reason, I revisit it pretty regularly. In terms of like grade ranking, I'd probably give it like 8 out of 10, and I'd probably rank it, I think, third out of the 6 albums. But it's still a very strong album. I've owned it for decades, and it still gets semi-regular rotation. So it's a really good one for me. It kind of stands alone because it's different from the ones before, and it's kind of different from what comes next. But before we get to that, Marty, thoughts on Through the Darkest Hour?
Hold on. There we go. It's my number one as well. It's my number one as well. And you're all right. This is a step away out of the trad metal influence. This is John embracing more of a stereotypical doom feel. I mean, they might have dropped a step in tuning a little bit. There's a little bit more fuzz, but that doesn't mean that the songs are any less interesting. And if anything, the losing some of that trad metal influence is it gives some of the riffs a little bit less encumbered, a little freer feel to it, a lot catchier here and there. I think this sonically, can you guys hear me? I'm not hearing myself in my headphones very well. Can you
I can hear it.
Okay,
Yeah,
right on.
you sound normal. No change.
Fuck. What was I going to say? Where was I going? Damn it. But the songs are freer, less encumbered, catchier. But one thing I really like about this, Robert is starting to actually, because there's less going on, he's kind of having to search for harmony a little bit more. And that it comes through on this album. He isn't following the riffs verbatim as much. He's actually doing some things that break away from that, which is very very welcomed. And my favorite album by them, like I said, my number one. But it's a sign of what's to come. Their next 3 albums are all really good. I mean, there really isn't a turd in this bunch. But the things that are set in stone here, I think they improve on even more so on the albums that come up. But I've listened to this one probably the most of the first 3. It's a really good album. It's really solid. Even though they've shed that traditional metal vibe, it still sounds like Solitude Aeturnus. It's still, the songs are really well constructed. I mean, Perez is an excellent songwriter. He's really a great guitar player and a great riff writer, and he knows how to piece a song of worth together, which is very cool.
Yep. All right. So, sounds like everyone digs Through the Darkest Hour. And so then we move on to album number 4. And double checking, this is again a couple of years later, 1996, saw album number 4, Downfall, get released. And so, Tom, what do you think of Downfall?
I'm going to go pee while you guys talk about Downfall.
Okay.
So I was in the green room. I was talking about this DVD concert.
Oh,
So they play the song Phantoms from this album, and John introduces it, and he says, like, here's a song from our worst album. And he's like, you guys might think otherwise, but you're wrong, or something to that effect. but he kind of clarified it, just saying that he really hated the production, that he still loved the songs. But basically, it's kind of taking what Through the Darkest Hour, that style, but it's more of a stoner kind of thing. I hear more Alice in Chains influence in there. And I don't think the production is, I think the production is fairly fitting for kind of a stonery mid-90s band. So it is kind of, the guitars are kind of noisy. It's kind of more muddled sounding, but to me, just listening to a lot of stuff like that, it doesn't sound bad to me. But I know John in particular like hated how it sounded. But having said that, I think it's still a strong album. Some of the riffs are simple but catchy. But there's a lot of also experimentation on this. There's like a weird interlude, Elysium. Chapel of Burning is one of my favorite Solitude Aeturnus songs, which I'm sure a lot of doom metal fans would hate because it doesn't sound like most of their songs. There's like no heavy metal singing. It's just more kind of a moody, atmospheric thing. But his vocal, I kind of wanted Marty to hear this because
I'm here.
Oh, okay. His vocal on Chapel of Burning, his vocal performance, he does a thing that just kind of the kind of the modulation that he does. So sometimes I think where he does kind of play something similar to the riff, but he kind of modulates it at the end or at different points. And that song in particular, to me, like just the vocal melody and the vocal performance on that song, like totally carries it. It's just so awesome. And then, again, I guess some people may not like the kind of the weirdness. There's like a random jamming. Midnight Dreams is kind of a weird song. It's kind of a bit repetitive for me. But I think Concern is a really good closer. And then they have the Christian Death cover of Death Wish. And I absolutely love that cover.
So that's a cover. Okay, that's a cover.
Yes,
okay, because the last song, Concern, when that song hit, I was like, holy fuck! It did not sound like the rest of the album. And Robert Lowe crushes on it. He's singing, he's doing some really killer shit on it. There's some simple riffs in that song but the way they transition between each other, it's like a brilliantly written song. I'm like, this has got to be a cover because he's singing differently than he sang on the whole entire album. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And then that's another, because those last two songs just really kill it for me. So there's sections of the album that are a little random or repetitive, or the riff is not super interesting, but some great songs. And normally I'm down on covers, and we'll get into that later. But I think
I'm down with it, or is like
no, I'm sorry, I don't like some random
okay
like Resurrection throwing a Kiss cover.
Right.
I'm like, but to me, this is an awesome cover. Because it's a different, because it's more of a kind of a rockin' song for them on the album. But I think it works on the album, and it's a really good cover, I think.
Yeah, good breakdown of the album. This one does come with 2 covers, so depending on where you bought it, I think the US version has this kind of weird gears and stairs and clockwork stuff cover going on.
Yeah.
I think this is the European cover. It's very red. There's something going on red there. So neither one necessarily going to win any awards for artwork.
Yeah,
but,
I don't even know what's going on this thing, but
yeah,
but there's actually a third cover because there was a vinyl re-release that has a totally different cover.
So they didn't
okay.
like
I
any
haven't
of them,
seen
so they kept hunting for the better cover, right?
Yeah, it's like the Knight and Brocken syndrome.
Mhm.
Let's
Not
just
that
keep,
bad, but
let's keep fucking it up.
I like the color pencil original. I always claim that's my favorite.
that's because your 3-year-old niece painted it for the band.
That's perfect. She did a killer job.
But yeah, anyway, yeah, Downfall. A lot of folks, are a little down on this album sometimes. It's one of my favorites by them. Maybe this is my contrarian moment or whatever. I love this album to death. It's easily the Solitude album I've played the most. No, not even close. You're right. The production, it doesn't ruin the album at all. It's not a huge problem for me. It could be better. It does noticeably have kind of a weird sound to it. But I really like the variation here. Like you said, this is where they're kind of experimenting a little bit. If this is meant to be like, their pure slab of, early Sabbathian metal, then this is where they're getting past that and starting to branch out and try a few different things. And for me, most of it just works extremely well. You've got Phantoms and Only This and Nothing More are both really solid songs. They could have been on other Solitude albums and would have fit in just fine. Midnight Dreams is one of the few times the band uses a sample, which of course was a huge thing in the 90s, but it opens with a clip. And Tom, I'm thinking this is from the original Lon Chaney Wolfman movie.
Yeah, when he's talking to the gypsy.
Yep.
Yeah. So obviously, it's about werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, it's a little odd because it's definitely not something they had done before, but it kind of works. And it was definitely, it fits with the times. It doesn't mess up the song or anything. They do it before. I like the fact that they did it and then play the song, that the clip isn't, buried in the middle of the song somewhere. Those would sometimes bug me.
I think Ryan has the comment on the 3-part stream on the original Knight and Brocken cover. I think Alan has covered the Knight and Brocken cover thoroughly throughout the history of watching his channel and all the streams.
We've been over that a few times for sure.
It's coming again here when Wagner with us.
Yes, yeah. Again, yeah. Marty and I, as you mentioned, Tom, we've got someone lined up for a for a Fates Warning episode sometime this summer when calendars match up. Okay, but yeah, we'll go back over it then. What else have we got here? Together and Wither. Just the song title alone, just so they're playing up the creepy vibe on the scale here a little bit, and I like it. Elysium, yes, it's just this kind of short interlude, but it's Rob doing the kind of paranoid schizo thing with his vocals, a little more Scott Riegers like almost. You got Death Witch. That cover is just fucking crushes that Christian death song. It's a good Christian death number to begin with. Mm-hmm. And the way they take it and kind of turn it into this driving doom song with this little bit of groove to it, it's just jaw-droppingly good. Like yourself, most covers I can take them or leave them. This cover, Death Wish, it's an essential part of this album. Then you've got These Are the Nameless. It has that great Solitude Aeturnus vibe to it. And Chapel of Burning is one of their top-notch songs. And then the closer Concern is also good. So to me, this is a fantastic album.
That's good.
I never have really understood why people disliked it so much, unless they just, if they wanted another, Into the Depths of Sorrow, this is not it. If they wanted another Through the Darkest Hour, this is not it. If you want a good Doom album, with a little bit of more variation, because, one thing that can hurt Doom albums sometimes is they can get a little too monolithic. There can be not enough variation sometimes. And this album has it in spades, but they don't do anything crazy. There's no house dance, trip hop mix going on or anything like that. Everything they do still fits in the parameters really nicely. And as such, it's an album I go back and play time and time again and still just love it to death. I would probably rank it, I'm thinking second in their discography. fantastic album. Love it. I understand if folks don't like the production, but it doesn't ruin the album. And it just, if you can listen past that, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with Downfall. So Marty, let me throw it over to you. I've gushed about it enough. What do you think of Downfall?
You guys nailed it all. I mean, the first time I heard it was this week, and again, I'm harping on this, but it's a big deal to me. And Robert's doing different things. Like you're talking, he's doing the weird, creepy voice here and there. He's doing some different shit, which is, he's following the music is getting a little more experimental as they go on. It's still expertly written. I did not know that one song was a Christian Death. I thought the last song, Concern, was a cover because it sounded so different from the rest of the album. And Robert's doing exactly what I want him to do there. He's pushing into the higher registers, and you can kind of tell he's kind of getting into the highest point of his range. And he does it well. And there's some really cool vocal shifts in that song. And really, I listened to that. I listened to it probably about 4 times. I thought the song was excellent. And for that alone, it's my number 4.
Okay.
It's a really solid record. I'll pick it up eventually. If I see it used, I'll be even happier. But yeah, I mean, he's starting to get it. He's starting to work out of a certain template. He's trying different things, which I applaud. And it only benefits this band, especially as they broaden their palette. They're starting to experiment a little bit here, doing some different things. And even though it's not that rebellious or that super creative, I'm just saying they're working within their framework, their formula, and stepping outside the bounds a little bit, which is, that's a sign of a really good songwriter that's knows what he's good at and knows that he can do these other little things that would maybe widen his reach a little bit. I think it's cool. Good album. It's a good album.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's more on this album of the vocal layering, the harmonies, and kind of like the moaning and almost like monk chant type stuff. And the big one is like the chorus of Chapel of Burning. There's kind of like this really great vocal harmony that he does.
Yep.
So that's another aspect that they've kind of added this album, and they added more of this album than the album before.
Mm-hmm.
In this album in particular.
Yep. Good point, Tom. All right. So once again, they kind of stick to the 2-year rotation. And so they come back in 98, another new record label. They were on Massacre at this point, and they release album number 5 called Adagio. So Tom, why don't you lead us into Adagio, please?
Yeah. So this one has a much slicker production than the previous album, and John was kind of big on that. I think it's again, it's a really great album. To me, it's kind of a little more uneven and a little long. But to me, like, I think Personal God is probably my favorite song on there, even though I think some people might not like it because it's kind of a simple riff, and then it's kind of just like weird layer of vocals. But how the song flows and just the variations on that riff to me are just so great. And then the first 2 tracks, Days of Prayer is such a great opener.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
And I hear there's a few times on this album I hear more of the first 2 records on certain riffs, like in the breakdown of Days of Prayer. There's kind of more complicated riffing that reminds me of like the second record here and there, but generally it sounds more like Through the Darkest Hour, basically. And then Believe is more of an atmospheric song. And Lament is also maybe my third favorite song. Again, like a great combination of kind of atmosphere and then building to a really heavy section. And then to me, I guess the big, there is like the weird typo negative ballad in the middle of it, but to me it's only 2 minutes long. So I don't. It's like, to me, it's kind of an interlude. But to me, that just a weird thing. Spiral Descent is to me very much a Black Sabbath homage, but then they follow up with the Heaven and Hell cover, so it seems kind of just extraneous to, you're already at track 12. You kind of have a Black Sabbath homage that works as a closer, and then but you still have a Heaven and Hell cover. And I will say that listening to this, and also there's a Dio tribute album, and there's another Dio cover that Robert Lowe does with another project. I can't remember which song it was, but like his Dio imitation is amazing.
Mhm.
But like once you get past that, it's like, well, it's just Heaven and Hell. This, it's barely different from the studio. I just don't like it when it's unlike the Christian Death cover. It's far too close to the original for me to really care. Although they did say that, I think I don't know if they were forced to, or but the record label wanted them to do a Black Sabbath cover.
Huh.
I don't know if they just suggested it or made them do it, or
They
something.
did for sure, because typically a record label doesn't want to pay the publishing for someone else's cover.
Yeah, Robert said in an interview that was the label's idea.
Oh, okay.
But he didn't say like they forced us, or because they did it live, in previous years. Like that's a song that they would cover live. So maybe the label just suggested it, but I don't know. And then Insanity Circles is like a cool, like really heavy, kind of moody song that is more like a track you would find on Downfall, with kind of these layered voices. And I guess the only I don't even know how to say it, but the fourth track, or the fifth track, Itis, or that's the one song that I'm not really that keen on, because it's just kind of long. And again, what Marty was saying, the kind of the chorus and the main riff on that one to me are a little boring. So that's the one song on this album, other than the Heaven and Hell cover, where I'm like, I could kind of skip it.
Okay.
And I guess the Typo Negative thing, but to me, it works okay as a, and for people who don't know, it's John Perez doing an acoustic ballad where he pretends to be Peter Steele, apparently, because he wants to hook up with goth chicks, I would assume.
Well, yeah, who doesn't?
But it's only 2 minutes long. So again, but they previously had like little sections and instrumental, intros, interludes. So to me, it's not that big a deal. And again, like the cover is, in terms of a Dio impersonation, is amazing to me. But then after that, I'm like, I don't care,
Okay. Yep. Good thoughts on that one. Yeah, for Adagio, for me, I'll begin with the end. This is my least favorite Solitude Aeturnus album. I would rank it 6 of the 6. It's not a bad album. There's just certain things about it that don't click with me. For one thing, the album before this I had liked a lot, and they had tried a lot of different little experiments. And this album, it feels like they really stick very close to a more quote unquote normal Doom formula. They don't have those different flourishes. I agree with you, Tom. I think the album's a bit too long. It feels like it drags at times. It's also just got kind of a funny pacing to it at the same time. It's 13 songs. None of them are technically an instrumental, but you have lots of these little, very short songs here and there. It's got, a short intro. Days of Prayer is a good opener. So, we get off on the right foot. But then you have, one more song, and then you hit, one of these little, less than 3 minute kind of interlude sections. And then Itis at number 5. Yeah. Not one of the stronger tracks. You've got a few more tracks, and then you hit, The Fall is that, 3 minute Pete Steele thing. And here it feels really out of place because there's nothing else like it on the album. The rest of the album, they're just sticking to very traditional Doom structures. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy talking in a voice for 2 minutes with an acoustic guitar. And it's just like, what you doing?
I
Not
like
sure.
cigarettes too, baby.
Yeah.
Cigarettes are delicious. I like
It's
Susie and the Banshees.
yeah, it might have fit in on the previous album because they were trying a lot of different little things, but on this album's more monolithic to me. And all of a sudden, you have this weird thing from out of left field, and it's only there for 2 minutes, and you're just kind of like, "Did you mean for that to be put right there? That doesn't feel like it belongs right there." Then you get to after that, yeah, you're kind of quickly wrapping up, a couple more songs, and then closing, with a cover. And they do absolutely nail that cover. You're right. I mean, it's basically they just replay it note for note. So maybe not the most interesting thing. They nail it so well, I don't mind in this case. Yeah, Rob just completely channels Dio. The band just crushes on it. I think Ryan mentioned, they had it in their live set. It's an amazingly well done cover, considering they didn't try to put their own spin on it whatsoever. But yeah, just everything about this album just feels a little bit dull to me. Even lyrically, they've gotten into a different space here. They don't have any of the bigger sort of grandiose apocalyptic stuff from the early albums. They don't even really have the really angry stuff from Through the Darkest Hour. A lot of the lyrics here are more like, well, it's the kind of reflecting on when I die. Okay. I'm going to meet my maker now. Tell him I said hi. They're good lyrics. Reading the lyrics, they're very neat. But when it's put with the music, it just kind of comes across a little bit lifeless. I've always thought the cover for this album fit this album perfectly well because it's just this big slab of gray where everything is kind of a little hard to make out and nothing really jumps out at you. And my joke about this album for a long time was that when the song on the album that has the most power and kind of makes the biggest impression is the cover song at track number 13, something didn't quite come together right for the album. Yeah, and again, there's other good songs here, but the way the album's put together, it never has really struck a chord with me. I don't mind it. Again, it sounds like I'm, being a bastard with the album. I don't mind the album. I bought it when it came out. I owned the same copy for the past couple of decades. And folks that know me will know that if I don't like an album, it's going to find a new home pretty quick. I don't keep stuff if I don't enjoy it. So it's still here on the shelf all this time later. But yeah, for me, it's easily it's easily going to take the 6th out of 6th place. I would still give it, the kind of C+ type of grade. Solitude Aeturnus on a bad day is still better than most other Doom bands. But yeah, it's an album where I have a hard time finding things that I want to come back to over and over. And as such, well, I don't. So Marty, where do you stand on this one?
Well, this is my number 5. And but it isn't because of the opener, Days of Prayer. There's a brief intro and then it goes into Days of Prayer. What a heavy, awesome fucking song. I love the slide. Super interesting, heavy riff. Robert comes in with standing before the door of the one I call God. My entrance has been denied, forever lost. Days of prayer, words wasted on the wind, trying to be all evil and shit, and sets the mood well for the track. And it's just a heavy, great opener to this album. The rest of the album, it's okay. I listened to it twice this week. I don't even remember the Heaven and Hell cover. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I must have stepped out or something. Both times I spun it. But
sorry to cut in for just a minute, Marty. But since we're talking about the covers, Jurgen pointed out correctly that they they did a killer Iron Maiden cover on one of those Dwell record cover albums, you know, one of the tributes
Yeah,
to Iron Maiden
I
things.
think it was called. I used to have it. I think it was called Call to Irons or
Yep,
something.
Oh, I think I
that's
had
the
that.
one. You're
And
right,
it was
Tom.
really good.
Yeah,
I
they
don't have it
absolutely
anymore.
nail
Right.
"Hallowed Be Thy Name"
Yeah.
on that one. Again, it's not, they don't do a very original take on it, but they sound so good that,
Mhm.
like with the Heaven and Hell cover, it works well. But anyway, sorry, Marty, back to you.
Oh no, I really had nothing. I mean, the debut track is my favorite song on the album. It's a great song. The album isn't bad. I mean, there isn't an album in this catalog that I disliked. It's just not as essential, I think, as early. And it's long. You're starting to track. You're getting more and more tracks. I mean, you're getting in the 90s when CDs are a thing and bands are writing for CDs. They stop writing for vinyl. They start writing for CDs. Longer track times, longer album times. And I don't know. It's a great album, but still, it ranks low on the list for me. It was my number 5. Maybe you guys nailed it. I haven't spent much time with it to really, you know, pontificate on it too deeply. So,
And I
Okay.
just wanted to add because they switched bass players, and Count Lyle, he was the lyricist, and then so the last 2 albums it's Robert doing the lyrics, so they are very different. But the one thing I do like is just that, and this is partially maybe just reading interviews with him and actually reading the lyrics and paying attention to them, but there is kind of a personal bent to lyrics now because he's writing them and singing them. So even though I do really love the lyrics of especially through the Darkest Hour, but of the albums previously, just really classy and poetic, I guess, but still kind of have an emotional bent. Like the song I'm thinking of is like "Falling" from Through the Darkest Hour. Like the lyrics are just amazing, but it's apparently about drug use, and you kind of get that once you kind of read through, but it's a lot of metaphor in there, whereas Robert's a lot more straightforward. You know, I'm depressed, you know, sad bastard. But yeah.
Yeah,
And then and in terms of I do love the album, except that it's too long, and again there's 3 tracks I can totally skip if you pull those tracks out. So I guess I would rank this 4 or 5, but it's the one album that to me is more the most inconsistent, but the tracks I love on there I love a lot, you know. So
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up about, this was, I think, the first lineup change they had experienced since back in the demo days, and it was an important one with Lyle not being there to write the songs anymore.
I need to run to the bathroom.
Sure.
Go for it.
Yep, we'll chat here for a minute. So at this point in 2000, the band finally got to put out the old "And Justice for All" demo on vinyl. It was titled just "Justice for All." It came out on Doomed Planet Records, and probably not a label most folks are familiar with. I know it because it was ran by Rob Preston, who is an old collecting buddy I've known for a number of years. Rob has, a huge and very deep heavy metal collection. He also had a huge punk collection and hardcore collection back in the day. He's very big into like Robert Howard, Conan, fiction and stuff like that. Really nice guy. I've talked with him and traded with him on numerous occasions over the years. And this was one of the big things he wanted to put out and got permission to do so. It was probably like the most visible release on his label. Although he did some other nice releases. Doomed Planet was very much a place to release those items that had never gotten their day in the sun from the 80s. And the demo went over quite well, got him some publicity for the label. So you do have a way to pick up the Justice for All demo on vinyl. But in terms of any new Solitude material, so you had Adagio in 98, and it would be a full 8 years before the next album would come out. And this was, when folks were really just like, what's going on? They were on a very pretty consistent schedule up to this point. with albums coming out pretty regularly. But yeah, from 98 to 2006, nothing really came about at all. And then in 2006, she got their sixth and last album, which was titled Alone. This one's still on Massacre. Cover art by Travis Smith, who was very in demand for cover artwork back in that day. I think it's one of Travis's best covers. I really like it. It fits the band, just the kind of general mood they went for quite a bit. Travis, Smith's art is one of those. I used to chat with the guy a bit on some forums and stuff. Nice guy, good sense of humor. But to be fair, sometimes I really liked his art, and some pieces I really didn't like. But this one, I thought, yeah,
It's
he really
Photoshoppy.
nailed it. Well, yeah, I mean, he was in that early, phase of artists switching over to using online graphics and tools, and he did it very well. And obviously,
made a
it
living
went well
on
for
it.
him.
Yeah,
but yeah, so we get an album called Alone. And Tom, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I do love this cover. It just makes you want to jump out of bed and achieve.
It's kind of apropos.
It reminds me of like the Jesus, what is it called? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Like that artwork with the kind of the body elongated.
Or the Hellhammer Triumph of Death demo.
Yeah, or
those old
nails and the 7,000 other black metal covers.
Yeah,
it could be like one of those old motivational posters. There's a kitten hanging onto the branch too, saying "You can do it." Hang in there.
Yeah, your neck isn't broken yet. Look at the bright side. Okay. My version is like a digipack, and then it has the bonus track. And then the weird thing is two of the tracks are reversed.
Yep.
So I don't know if is that the same thing with yours? Like Sightless and Waiting for the Light are reversed. So Waiting for the Light actually plays second.
Yeah, tracks 2 and 4 are flipped on my copy too. I've got the same pressing you do.
Okay. But yeah, so I don't think I fully gave my rankings, but this would be my least favorite.
Mine too.
I would say I love the first 5. Not always for the same reason. And but the funny thing is I'd be hard pressed to name a bad song on this album. But I don't think it's as inspired as the first 5. To me, it sounds more like they want to deliver a solid Doom album. They really kind of expand their sound. And then what the Marty's complaint about Robert copying the riffs with his vocal lines. This is the album where that kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
Where I really notice it, and also like some of the songs are too long. But I think Scent of Death, the opener, is really great. Even though it's like 10 minutes, it really builds really well. And then Blessed Be the Dead is kind of it's kind of a more atmospheric track, and I really love that song. And then Tomorrow's Dead would probably be my third favorite track. And then probably the one song that sticks out that's not as good to me is Burning. I don't like the kind of the main descending riff. And again, it's like a 9 minute song. But again, it just shows how strong this catalog is. Like, I'd be hard pressed, to say there's a bad song on my least favorite album of theirs. I guess Burning would be the closest one.
Okay. Yeah, this one for me, I'd have this 5th out of the 6 albums. I think it's a little better than Adagio. If nothing else, I think the production on this album is better. The songs sound a little more powerful, a little louder. Again, something with Adagio's sound just always comes across kind of muted to me. But yeah, this album, the sound quality is better. The things stand out. The guitars are sharper. The solos, which again, they're always good at soloing. You want to hear those, and they pop a little better on this album than they did on Adagio for me. But yeah, otherwise, I kind of agree with your take on it, Tom. There's nothing really bad here at all, and there are some cool songs along the way. I don't mind Burning that much. But yeah, Scent of Death is pretty good. The bonus track is what, Embrace?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
Embrace. I
10
like the
minutes
bonus
long.
track. Is really a good one. But at the same time, yes, this one does feel a lot like Adagio in the sense that it does feel like they're really now sticking to this. By now, again, this is 15 years after the debut. Doom metal is its own
A thing.
genre.
It's a
It's a
thing.
thing, and as such, because it's a thing, it's becoming kind of codified. And this album and Adagio, to me, they feel like, here's a doom metal record. Just it's right there in the lane. It's not going too far to the left, not going too far to the right. We're a doom metal band, and this is a doom metal album, and that's kind of it. So while, yeah, there's nothing on here again that makes me think, ugh, I don't like it. A lot of times I look at this track list and I'm hard pressed to remember many of these songs, and I have to go back and replay them. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Now I remember that one. Now I remember this one. But it's never had much staying power. It's an album I was really excited about when it came out. This is another one. I bought it as soon as it came out. Was really happy to hear the band was going to put something out. A lot of folks had assumed they were going to hang it up. Again, 8 years, that's a big gap. Folks, John had mentioned we haven't broke up. We're working on something. We might get to it one day, and they did. So yeah, it was anticipated. The folks, it was pretty warmly received. I think I was in the minority of folks who felt that it was like, maybe, you put out a solid Doom album, but for a band with this pedigree that has done so many really top shelf albums earlier in their career, kind of wanted something a little bit more. This one, not bad, but it's maybe in that like 6 or 7 out of 10 kind of range. Not a bad album at all. It just nothing again draws me back to it. Nothing stands out. If I'm doing like my personal Solitude Aeturnus workout mix, which probably isn't the right band to work out to, but I guess I put Embrace. You put a 10-minute song as like one of the better ones on here. Maybe Scent of Death. It's only 9 minutes. I don't know. There's not many. There's not a ton of highlights. There's no lowlights, but there's not a ton of highlights either. So, not a bad album. But yeah, I wish maybe it had been a little stronger. Marty, what do you think of Alone?
This is my number 6. It's the one I listened to the least of the batch, and it's not because it's a bad album. It's solid. Tom's right. Robert Lowe kind of reverts back to his old tricks a little bit. I sound like a broken record. I'm sorry, but this shit bugs the shit out of me. But it's okay. I don't know if this one turned up used. I don't know if I'd be as excited to buy it. I'd probably still get it. It's solid. It's heavy. It's well written. Again, there's not really a terrible song on the record. It's a solid record, but my attention started waning by the album 6 of this catalog, and the songs are good, but they're just not as stand out to me as the rest of the catalog. Especially the better tracks on like Downfall and Through the Darkest Hour and Beyond the Crimson Horizon. But solid record. Okay. I mean, it's okay. It's my number 6.
Okay.
But something's got to be last, right?
Yep. That may be something else that you just mentioned, Marty, that maybe is a thing for me too. I liked Downfall so much. And then neither of these albums really tried to do anything. They moved away from that into just like the very safe zone. And that may be something that has always hung over these two albums a little bit.
Well, they're probably feeling a bit vindicated. We've been doing this Doom thing for so many years now, and now it's a thing, and we feel like we need to write in that ballpark again. Whereas, this earlier shit, it plays with it, but it never really settles on it. And now that there's a genre around them, they're probably feeling like they have a place to hang their hat. Whereas beforehand, they felt probably like lone wolves out there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
along with a few other bands that were kind of, in that nebulous area of, are we doom? Are we the white metal? Are we this metal? What are we? I have no idea, but yeah, I mean, that plays, I'm sure it played into a little bit. They're probably swinging, they're preaching to the converted at this point.
Yep. So yeah, that was the last of their studio output. Now they did have a couple more official items released that I know Tom wants to touch on. There was a video release, which came out in 2007, and I think this had a CD issue eventually too.
Yeah, I think there is a CD and vinyl issue. It's a live recording from 2007, a concert recording, and this is the combo pack, so it's kind of fancy, like it folds out.
Very cool.
Wow, it's like a switchblade.
It's like some crazy martial arts weapon. But then it's also, I think, available just on CD and vinyl, just the live album. But it has a bunch of extras on it as well, and it's a concert in Poland. So it's a really good set list. Ninth Day Awakening, Destiny Falls to Ruin, Phantoms, Falling. And it also has just like camcorder footage on there. And there's also a really good 35-minute or so interview with Robert and John about the entire band. So some of the facts I've been spitting out are just because I watched that 2 days ago. And
No,
I'm
that's
remembering
cool.
it.
Yeah, I've never had that. So yeah, that's cool to hear.
Let me see here. So yeah, there's a couple songs with the original singer. Yeah. So, and it's called, I didn't say the name of it, Hour of Despair. So.
Yep. So yeah, there's that. Marty, have you seen that one?
I tried to order it a long time ago, and it ended up, I got refunded because they were out of stock.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I've never owned it or seen it, so yeah, I can't say anything there. But yes, they did that in 2007, and then in 2011, we've kind of come full circle because that's when John helped release that In Times of Solitude compilation of all their early demos and such. But yeah, and so that's been kind of the end of the line for Solitude Aeturnus. But the guys have remained active with other things. There's been a lot of other projects with one or more of these guys in them. So. Tom, what other are there some of the other projects that you'd like to touch on?
Well, some of these I was just listening to yesterday for the first time. I think Jurgen mentioned the Grief Collector, which I was just listening to this morning, which is really good, really heavy doom metal with Robert on vocals. But again, like I don't think I even finished the whole album. I just didn't have time. So it's something I want to re-listen to. There was an album, a project called Last Chapter from 1997.
Drinking that sweet Photoshop debauchery.
So that was produced by Perez and Robert Lowe is on vocals, and I'm not sure what the rest of the lineup is. Again, I just started listening to this last night, but to me, it's a lot more like Early Trouble is what it sounds like to me. But really solid. And then there was Concept of God. So basically in 2001, Solitude minus John Perez, who's obviously the leader of the band and the main songwriter, they did a project called Concept of God and recorded an album called Visions, but it was not released until 2007 for some reason. And that to me is more kind of, it is still doom, but more kind of like groovy of 2001. And kind of hit and miss. There's a couple of really great tracks, and like there's one song with a cowbell that's pretty bad, I thought, and I can't remember the name of it. And they do a Man on the Silver Mountain cover So if you want to hear more covers, the song "Hearing Voices" I wrote down is a really great track that is a little more reminiscent of Solitude Aeturnus. A lot of it is kind of have more of a groovy doom kind of thing, more rocking in spots. But there were some standout tracks, I thought, and a couple bad ones.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad release, but I never picked it up. I did hear it several times. I think I have it. I think I bought a digital download and just was like, yeah, I'm good with this. I don't think I need this one on the shelf. It's not bad, but like you said, it only has maybe a couple of really, really top songs.
And then I just wanted to add for the last chapter, because I listened to it last night and then ordered it, and it was from John Perez on Discogs. Like he has a distro, his Brain Ticket distro, and I left in the order comments, the shipping comments, like I said, "You are a metal god," and then something else. So we'll see if he replies.
This last chapter CD I got, I ordered something off eBay, and it happened to be from him a long time ago, and he threw this in for free with the order. So you'll probably, because of the Metal God comment, get some free stuff.
Well, I was just being honest. I mean, just delivering facts.
Spitting truth, yo.
And then the people have been saying in the comments the tyrant thing, but I was only just like listening to that before we went on a little bit. So I probably shouldn't even talk about it. But if Alan,
I've never actually circled around to that Tyrant album. It's always on the I need to play this sooner or later list and just haven't got to. But yeah, some folks in the chat have been talking that one up quite a bit tonight. So it'll get into the playlist sometime, and we'll see how Rob sounds there.
Is it on Spotify? I'm sure it is. Let's see.
Don't know.
King of Kings, is that the album?
Let's see. What's it called?
Got to be the 2018.
Yes. No. It's the one after that.
Hereafter.
Yeah, it was on Spotify.
Yeah, I'm double checking, but I don't think he sang on King of Kings. Nope.
I'll check it out. I'll leave it up here and check it out.
Yeah. Of course, Rob also did the 3 albums with Candlemass, but we kind of talked about those a bit earlier. That his stint with the band was kind of high profile, but also ended up being a bit tumultuous, and they've parted ways some time ago.
This is a great album. I love this record. I listen to this. I still pull it out on occasion. He did a great job on this record, and it had to be because he was following that other guy's vocal lines. But man, Emperor of the Void, Embracing the Sticks, with Stars and Smoke. Great fucking songs, man. Good. It's a good revitalized album. They kind of went to shit after that, though. Sorry, it's true.
I don't mind the other albums with him nearly as much as you do. They do start to have some problems. They start to have some problems, but I don't mind them that much.
Yeah, you guys kind of already debated this on the Candlemass show, but I do really like the second, and I can't remember. I never remember the name of albums, but like Death Magic or whatever.
The second one.
Death Magic. Yeah, I do really. It's kind of a little more rocking, I guess, but I do really like that album a lot. But the one after that, I don't own, but I've just listened to it and I didn't really like it that much.
The Bleeding Baroness is a good song.
Yeah, this one still has some good tracks on, but yeah, it's the wheels are starting to get noticeably wobbly.
Which is a song about the Queen Bee. That thing is fucking garbage.
In the Temple of the Mad Queen Bee or something.
Oh God, it's so
Dancing
dumb.
in the Temple of the Mad Queen Bee.
Oh, it's so dumb. But whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, I think something else to touch on here. Again, as we've mentioned tonight, this is not a band that got a huge amount of attention, especially in the early days of their career. By the end, they were more widely recognized as a thing in one of the big forces in doom metal that had been they were veterans of the scene by that point. But now it's over a decade later, and a lot of folks, as we've seen in the comments tonight, don't necessarily connect with this band or really know what they sound like. I think it's worth noting, though, that they have been a huge influence on a lot of the doom metal projects that have come out since Solitude Aeturnus began. And you hear, in some of these bands every now and then, you hear that same combination of someone wanting to take, some of the classic Candlemass vibes and grafting it onto that traditional metal structure. I pulled, just a couple of examples of things that, kind of picked up the torch where, Solitude Aeturnus was leaving off. While Heaven Wept, after, their first release was more of a doom death kind of thing, more in the, peaceful Big Three style. But after that, Tom Phillips went in a very different direction with the project. And, this album was, heralded in its release as just being, a great fusion of Awaken the Guardian era Fate's Warning and, these doom bands like Candlemass and Solitude Aeturnus. We've seen it more recently with, Crypt Sermon, kind of doing the same thing, getting that, very classic, the adjective we started with. John wanted to do something classier. Crypt Sermon is doing something classier, but they're keeping that traditional metal framework to the songs at the same time. Atlantean Codex has that same kind of vibe to them. It's it's a traditional metal structure, but this big epic grandeur sweep to it. So Solitude Aeturnus, folks this might be slipped. It seems like, based on comments and stuff we've seen tonight, it feels like they've slipped through the cracks a little bit over this past 15 years. And so for folks, if these other names that we've been mentioning, things like Candlemass, Trouble, Solitude, or Crypt Sermon, While Heaven Wept, if you know these albums and you really dig them, Solitude Aeturnus should be really high on your list of priorities to check out in the near future. If they just never made it onto your radar, follow up. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear. So, Tom, any last thoughts or any other projects or items that you wanted to talk about with the band?
I just want to note I'm shocked that it took a full 2 hours to get a Rob Lowe joke. Ben Brain Smasher had the Rob Lowe. So I was waiting for a Wayne's World reference. I thought they would come. I in my head, I'm like, I'm going to get on, and then Marty's going to do Wayne's World, sex, the sex tape, the Rob Lowe. But I'm glad that they would have derailed things. So
yeah, we took the high road for sure. Yeah, I guess it's worth pointing out there is another Rob Lowe that has a metal connection. That there's a different Rob Lowe who worked with the Ohm project. The OM. I think it's just pronounced Ohm.
The Sleep Guys.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's not a style. I don't know much about them, but if you do like Rob Lowe metal, you will also find links to him. I think he did keyboards with them for a period of time, but not the same guy at all, of course.
I play keyboards.
All right, Marty, any final thoughts about Solitude Aeturnus?
I don't. I really appreciate you guys bringing the thunder on this one, because I felt behind the 8 ball on this one, because like I said, I'm late to the band, and I only own 3 albums, so I had to kind of scramble a bit this week to try to get somewhat up to speed. Which isn't really fair. I'll be honest. Listening to an album once or twice, before a showtime really isn't fair in a ranking video, but the way it goes sometimes. And people bitch about Spotify, but praise hail Spotify for having a lot of this crap on their platform and being quite intuitive. It's a great tool, and I personally use it a lot for heavy metallurgy. It's great. And if anybody was curious, Blinded Inside loves Tyrant with Rob Lowe singing on it, so you should definitely go check that out, because he thinks that's good shit, and his enthusiasm for it has inspired me. It's up next on I'm gonna probably listen to that tonight. Maybe we'll give that a spin. But to be honest, I'm about Solitude Aeturnus out as far as listening to them this week. But it's been a lot of fun, and Tom, we really, really, really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. But does anybody have anything else to add?
I don't remember if we noted. Well, I can't remember if we did this in the pregame, but the first 2 albums are pretty hard to find, even CD or vinyl, especially. So, and I don't know why they haven't been both repressed again because they only got the original Road Racer vinyl pressings, I think, and never got repressed.
Hmm.
So that to me is weird, especially since John has or at least had his own. Although he did re-release the first one on CD, but even now it's harder to find. So,
Well, how old are these Metal Mind ones here that I have? I mean, the first two I have Metal Mind reissues of. Of course, they're used. Let's see here. 19. Holy fuck! I'm so blind. Hold on. Getting old rules, people. No, it doesn't say 1990 King Music, King
Metal
Classic.
Mind was 2007, so that's 15 years.
Okay.
Jesus, I'm fucking old.
Yeah, it looks like there's if you want, and that was the last time it was released in a place that wasn't Russia.
Ah.
That I can see right off the top of my head here.
Does anybody else notice that the Russian bootlegs are strangely absent from eBay these days?
No, they're not strangely absent at all. They're very understandably absent.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing strange about that.
There is nothing strange about that, but it's kind of funny that happened quick.
Yep, but
here we go. Are we gonna do an episode on Tyrant? Well,
probably not, to be fair.
Probably not.
A fun band. I know the first two albums quite well, but there's probably not enough there for a full episode. But fun stuff, nevertheless. Yeah, maybe the Solitude Aeturnus stuff will get a reissue. We are in the age of reissuing everything imaginable from back in that era, so it's not out of the question. I know Roadrunner, yes, has not had the best reputation for getting older titles back out there.
No.
But
they must want a shit ton of money to sell a license. They must, or we'd see more of that.
It might be. At the same time, some things are coming out here. I just noticed today, for example, the one of their old albums from 1986. It's by a band called Trojan, titled "Chasing the Storm." Really great, very kind of late period new wave of British heavy metal, early speed metal. It was very hard to find. It only had kind of like this one CD pressing back 15 years ago. I've been trying to find a copy of it for several weeks lately, and all the old pressings are extremely expensive. I'm not going to pay $80 and plus shipping to somebody in Poland and wait 9 months for it to show up. All of a sudden it's gotten reissued this year. There's a 2 CD set of Trojans Chasing the Storm out now, so somebody got the rights to that and put it back out. I don't remember what label it's on. I should, but here and there, things are seeming to get reissued, even from the stubbornly to open vaults of Roadrunner. That was not grammatically correct, but I think everybody knew what I meant.
Right.
All right. Well, I think it is then about time to bid everyone adieu. Once again, Tom, thanks so much for joining us and for picking a really cool band, really cool topic.
Absolutely.
Again, based on what we've seen in the chat and everything tonight, I think a lot of folks will be able to check out this band for maybe the first time and figure out just how good they are in that pantheon of Candlemass and the newer bands that people have been gushing about in recent years, like Crypt Sermon, and understand a little bit more of where the connection was. Solitude Aeturnus kind of bridges that gap between those two eras of epic doom metal, and they did it quite well.
Yeah. I'll just say that they're probably my favorite American doom band. The doom kind of has a lot of things you could call doom, but so I prefer them over Saint Vitus, for example. I guess would be number 2.
I was kind of thinking about that. A lot of the bigger name doom bands are actually not American bands, but America has some very big ones. But a lot of you reel off a lot of the big names, and you're like, that's British. That is also British. That too is British. The British must be a very depressing people to have so many doom bands. But yeah, they definitely are right there, top tier doom from any place, and certainly within the U.S. scene. I would agree wholeheartedly.
Yep. All right. Everybody, please go check out the Cine Arcadia Productions channel, which is Tom's channel. Link in the description. And also, we're going to get Tom back for another topic at some point down the road here. It's been a lot of fun.
We can do 4 hours on the last Tyrant album.
We'll have Blinded Inside on for it.
We'll
But,
we'll get the rights, stream it live,
Yeah.
with each of us individually giving track by track assessments.
Coming up,
Sorry, my cat was complaining, so I assumed he wanted to get on camera. So I wanted to give him the.
instead he just wanted you to pick him up so he could scratch you.
Yeah, scratch my eyes out.
Fuck you, Tom. But just so everybody knows, Wednesday, the next Glorious Album Club is going to be on this album, Dold Vorde Ens Naven, with their debut full-length Morkera, Norwegian black metal, with Havard from Olver and 3 other dudes from Dodheim's Guard, Vic Noctic on vocals. Have you listened to this yet, Alan?
Nope, I have not had a chance to check it out.
Get ready, brother.
I'll try to get to it this weekend, but there's
Take your notes.
Geodudes to catch tomorrow for Geodude Community Day in Pokemon Go. So going after that little rocky bastard hard in the morning.
Got to catch them all, everybody. Don't forget. But Tom, don't hang up. We're going to chat for a minute. And everybody else, thank you so much for hanging out with us again on another Friday. Was a ton of fun. The White Claws are starting to work a little bit. So forgive me here a little bit there.
I'll have some left. There you go.
There you go. He's drinking a real drink. I'm drinking this garbage. But anyway, cheers to everybody. Thank you so much. We love all of you. Thank you for hanging out with us. We really appreciate all you hanging out and supporting us and watching. Thank you so much. Tell your friends. Click your links and subscribe and the bells and all that stuff. But cheers. We'll see you next week.